Doyle Show, 570 News.
I almost said Happy Monday, but that's, well, forget it. It was a Happy Monday. Well, let's just slide into Tuesday, shall we? The election, by-election coming up here and in Vaughan this week. We've got lots to talk about. About 6,000 voters made their mark at advance polls ahead of this week's by-election at KW. Now, that is encouraging. There's lawn signs everywhere. Mailboxes have been stuffed with campaign literature. Doors have been knocked. Hands have been shook. Fingers have been wagged. But have any minds been made up? Well, at last count, about 6,000 of them. The rest of us may need most of the available time we have left to decide where to place our support. Some say it's as simple as majority versus minority. Others say it should be about local issues and not a mandate. We have 4 of the candidates in studio today to discuss, debate, rebuke, rebuff, and accuse. I'm on record as being against negative campaigning, so I want to hear what a candidate and his or her party can do. And I can decide for myself what party and what candidate to avoid. It's important to get the message out there. It's important to be heard, so that those of us who haven't made a decision will have the information we need to mobilize, to get off the couch and participate, to engage in the process. Because ultimately, that's what we need in Ontario. We need more people engaged in the process. To that end, we will spend the first 2 hours of today's show listening, interjecting, and taking your calls on your issues. The candidates have been seated. The phone lines are open. So what do you need to know before marking your ballot?
The Gary Doyle Show, 570 News. News, talk, sports.
It is 9:06. Hey, here we are already. Now, if you're following along online, we're live streaming this morning. There's 2 ways you can tell we're live streaming. If you're at 570news.com, you can see the pictures, and I'm wearing a shirt with a collar. Those are the 2 things you know that it's a different day here at the studios. It is our candidates debate. It is not an all candidates debate. We physically cannot handle everybody whose name is appearing on the ballot. Therefore, the 4 leading contenders, the 3 major parties and the Green Party, which consistently polls and consistently puts people in elections, have been included in this round of conversation. And they're with us in studio. So they've been seated, as you can see, at 570news.com. And what we're going to do is we drew lots this morning, and that's how they were seated, from my left to my right. And that's also how they're going to be numbered, 1 through 4, for opening statements. And the opening statements are 60 seconds. Okay, so, and I don't have a stopwatch. We will try to be as fair as we can to everybody. So the phone lines are open. If you have questions for any of the candidates, please start phoning in now. We're going to get to those just momentarily. 519-570-2545 in town. Out of town, toll free, 1-800-570-5715, the cell phone number. Hands free, star 570. And you can email the show. Just go to Gary at 570news.com. You can also send me questions on Twitter and through Facebook. Whew, that's a lot. And now it's the candidate's turn. So let's start with the NDP candidate, Catherine Fife.
Good morning, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good to get you here.
Really exciting by-election. By-elections are a unique opportunity to reintroduce the people of this riding, new ideas about political parties, about the aspirations of the NDP in the province of Ontario. And to your point, we have been trying to actually talk about real ideas and real issues in this election. It's true, though, that the issue of a minority versus majority government comes up at the door, and there are some serious trust issues with a majority government. And, in many respects, this is a referendum on Dalton McGuinty and the Liberals and their record. That said, what we are hearing at the doorstep, healthcare, the lack of doctors, 20,000 people in this riding do not have access to a family physician, a very real issue. The other issue, of course, is jobs. And so I've talked about jobs at every single door. We have the job creator tax incentive. It's very simple. You create a job as a small or medium-sized enterprise, and you get a tax credit. And it has worked very well in other jurisdictions. And in a minority setting, we can move those agenda items forward. And that's one of the reasons why I'm running in this campaign, is that a minority setting allows a local candidate to advance the priorities of the people at Queen's Park.
All right, that's Catherine Fife representing the NDP. Stacey Dankert is next from the Green Party.
Yeah, thank you, Gary, for having me on. So this is our final debate with just 2 days left till we go to the polls. And I've been hearing at the doors a lot about strategic voting. So I would like to try to convince some of the voters that the best strategic vote is actually for Green this time. This is a by-election, one with great importance. But this time you actually have a choice to vote with your heart, with your conscience. Our options here this time are for a majority Liberal government or for a candidate that leads to exactly the same setup that we've already had. But the truly unique opportunity that we have this time is for a vote for change. And as a swing vote in Queen's Park, I would be the only candidate who can represent the needs of this region first and foremost without the pressure of a whip vote. And this is a tremendous opportunity for you to tell the old parties that the old ideas are just simply not working, that we need to think more creatively about solutions for real people and start talking about ideas because they're good ideas. Solutions that actually help to save money, create good jobs, and focus on strengthening this community.
All right, Stacey Dankert from the Green Party. Tracy Weiler representing the Progressive Conservatives. Tracy.
Hi, Gary. Well, thank you very much for having us here. It's a pleasure to be here and to be able to chat with the 570 News team and all your listeners. As the candidate for the PC party, I'm really excited to have the opportunity to hopefully follow in Elizabeth Whitmer's footsteps and continue on her good work. I am a local businesswoman. I do a lot of volunteer work in the community, and most importantly, I'm a mom with 2 young children. And I want to make sure that we create a good future for our children and grandchildren in Ontario. I immigrated here with my family when I was 12, and Ontario was the best place to live in the world. And my family thought there would be a great opportunity for us to build our future here. And when I look at the future of Ontario today for my children, I'm not seeing the same things. And when I think you want to see change in your province, in your world, you have to be part of it. You want to have a role in representing your community. And so ultimately, the PC party has a great plan to grow the economy, create jobs, and make sure we stop the overspending and waste that's happening in the Liberal government today, so we can make sure that we spend our precious tax dollars on the areas, the critical service areas like healthcare and education.
All right, Tracy, thank you. Eric Davis from the Liberal Party is our fourth and final candidate in studio, and the fourth to make his opening comments. Eric.
Thanks, Gary. One of the issues that I keep hearing door to door is parents concerned about stability in our schools. I found that there's a lot of misinformation out there in relation to teacher negotiations, and I just wanted to take a few seconds to correct the record. Negotiations between the Ontario government and all the teachers' unions started back in February of this year. 2 of the teachers' unions, ETFO and OSSTF, walked away from the negotiations after the first day. The 2 other teachers' unions stayed with the negotiations, and we were able to reach agreements with them. In early June, 3 months ago, the local branch of the OSSTF here in Waterloo Region announced that they would be having a strike vote in the first week of September. A week or 2 ago, the OSSTF of Waterloo Region postponed their strike vote, likely as a result of this election. Last week, the president of ETFO announced that ETFO will be holding strike votes all across the province, including Waterloo Region, in September and October. On September 1st, the existing teacher contracts rolled over, which gives teachers a 5.5% wage increase, and also makes sure that they increase the number of bank sick days that they received. The Liberal government is committed to balancing the budget while protecting the gains we've made in education, and that includes a 2-year wage freeze. So on September the 6th, I'd encourage people to vote Liberal.
All right, Eric, thanks very much. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest education is going to come up over the next 2 hours, but I have a number of email questions waiting. I've got a few on Twitter, and we have 1 phone call waiting already. So I want to... Sorry, yes?
I think I'd like to weigh in on that opening statement. I mean, clearly Mr. Davis is putting out a fire that the Liberal Party created in this province, and that's the manufactured crisis in education. Even though, there was no strike vote set, and yet literature came out saying that there's going to be a strike vote. This is a manufactured crisis which was meant to destabilize and take the attention off real issues in this riding. And I'm disappointed that Mr. Davis has come out right out defending their actions when there are jobs and healthcare at play in this riding.
Okay. Well, I take exception to Ms. Fife assertion that education is not a real issue. Education is an important issue, and what we're trying to do in our government is make sure that we put students first, and that's really important. We need to make sure that we balance the budget, and we have a moderate and progressive approach to doing just that. We need to make sure that we continue to protect the gains we've made in education, like lower class sizes, like higher graduation rates, and that we make sure that we protect the quality of our education system. But the fact is that we also need to balance the budget. We have a $15 billion deficit. It's incredibly important for us to make sure we balance that. We're doing it in a moderate way. The Hudak PCs would fire teachers and eliminate full-day kindergarten. We don't think that's the appropriate approach. Similarly, the NDP are making billions in spending promises without actually saying how they're going to pay for it. And I remind Ms. Fife that I don't even know her party's stance on public sector wage increases.
You don't understand 0 and 0? I mean, the teachers put 0 and 0. That
So
is a wage freeze.
Are you in favor of public sector wage increases?
I guess there's a reason we are in a $15 billion deficit if you don't understand what a wage freeze is, Mr. Davis. And
Well, do you understand what a wage freeze is?
Today, students went to school. I just dropped off my daughter at Empire. That those students were always going to be going to school on the first day of school. There was never any threat. Mr. McGuinty legislated people back to work before they even left work. So let's talk about the real issues in this election: jobs, healthcare, the education system, for sure.
Okay, Tracy, your party was mentioned in there, so
Yes.
I want to get you on this
Yeah,
before we
thank
go on
you.
to another issue.
Yeah, I just think what Mr. Davis is saying is making false claims about what the PC party is trying to do. We have never stated any of the areas that he's talked about in terms of budget cuts. In fact, when we look at our focus has been to grow the economy, create jobs, reduce the overspending and waste that's happening in the government today. For example, we've spent $2.4 billion on e-health with nothing to show for it. We have a $730 million scandal of Orange. We have a $190 million power plant that could have that wasted our precious tax dollars. And we have committed that when we get rid of this waste and mismanagement of our money, we will create investment in those critical service areas like healthcare and education, protecting those critical service areas. So what Mr. Davis is saying is just simply lies. It's fear-mongering, scaring people, and it's wrong.
Stacey?
Well, I think that it's true that we need to refocus what we're talking about in terms of education back onto our kids. Because that, of course, is the most important thing, creating a quality education system. And so what I think that everybody else is missing is the potential to save $1.5 billion a year by creating a fair system that merges the Catholic and public school boards.
All right. I'm going to have to take a quick commercial break. We've got callers stacked up. We could have all kinds of fun here today if I didn't have to follow some rules. We will anyway. If you're on hold, stick around. We're going to get to caller questions in just a minute. This is 570 News.
Call 570-2545 or toll free at 1-800-570-5715. The Gary Doyle Show on 570 News. Show 570 News.
It is 9:21. We're spending the first 2 hours of the show today with 4 candidates from the upcoming Thursday by-election in KW. Catherine Fife of the NDP, Stacey Dankert from the Green Party, Tracy Weiler from the PCs, and Eric Davis from the Liberals are all with us in studio. Clearly, you guys know the phone number because I got a lot of people waiting to get questions in here. So let's just, Drew, you've been very patient. What's your question?
My question's for Catherine Fife. A local NGO called Concerns Parents Coalition have just released a legal opinion saying that you violated the Education Act as a trustee by holding private votes when the Act demands that they be held in public. I want to know how you can say you will govern in a democratic way when you conducted yourself with such a lack of transparency and accountability as a school board trustee.
Well, thank you very much for the question, and it's good for me to be able to air my views on that issue. First of all, it's completely untrue. The Education Act is very prescriptive in what can happen in camera and what can happen outside in the public session. And as a chair, I mean, I'm dictated by that legislation, and as is the entire board. And so those claims are untrue and clearly meant to distract from the real issues of this election, which is creating real jobs in this community, fostering and supporting greater healthcare options, and continuing to support and build trust in public education, which has quite honestly been compromised by the Liberals and most recently by Mr. Hudak joining in this legislated affair at Queen's Park to try to legislate people back to work when they're actually at work today. Thank you very much for the question, though.
All right. Tracy.
I think it's important to recognize that the PC party has advocated for a wage freeze across the board for 10 months now, and actually put legislation forward in March related to a wage freeze across the sector for all public sector employees, including MPPs. And we thought that was a fair approach, an approach that would allow us to save $2 billion annually. I'm glad the Liberals have finally agreed with us that a wage sector freeze across the board is the right way to go. It's fair, it's equitable, and it will help go some footsteps, some small footsteps towards solving our $15 billion deficit that we're looking towards this year.
Just on that point, Gary, if I might. I mean, it's true. I mean, Mr. Hudak has said, he got half a loaf out of the Liberal Party and joined in this legislation, which is undermining collective bargaining rights. And there's something really important that the general public need to understand on this, is that the collective bargaining rights are rights, and they're ingrained in the Labor Relations Act, which has been violated throughout this entire process. So when the unions and teachers, OSSTF, OECTA, who actually had a deal, who actually agreed for more than a wage freeze, still got legislated back, they have a very good case, and they will take that case to the Supreme Court of Ontario, and they will win, and we will owe all of those sectors upwards of $780 million. So it is completely irresponsible for Mr. Hudak and Mr. McGuinty to go the legislative route instead of true negotiations. It's cynical. People feel it as I'm knocking on doors, and they're not buying it. They see it clearly as a political ploy to win this by-election. And I think that both of those leaders have underestimated the caliber of the people in this riding.
All right, Eric.
I just want to respond quickly on the collective bargaining issue. First off, we greatly respect collective bargaining rights here in Ontario. That's why we were at the table starting in February of this year. We were there because we wanted to negotiate with all four public sector teachers' unions, ETFO and OSSTF. ETFO walked away within the first hour, OSSTF later on that same day. How do you negotiate with someone who doesn't even want to be at the table? We've repeatedly asked them back to the table. They decided not to come back for the table. OECTA, as an example, we spent hundreds of hours negotiating with them, and we reached a deal. We reached a deal with them, and now we're in a situation in Ontario where we need to balance the budget. We need to bring down the deficit, and one of the ways that we've chosen to do that is to not fire teachers or otherwise disrupt the education system. We're asking for a 2-year wage freeze. But we're not only asking that from teachers, we're asking that for all public sector workers. We've also asked teachers to say, look, we just can't afford the bankable sick days that they've previously enjoyed. Instead, we wanted to bring in a new system of short and long-term disability. We're doing this because we need to make sure that we're fiscally responsible here in Ontario. I have a great respect for teachers and what they do. I've had a number of great teachers throughout my lifetime, and we do respect the collective bargaining process. I mean, as a lawyer, I understand the importance of collective bargaining. But what we've done is we've done the moderate and balanced thing, and that's to make sure that we can balance the budget while trying to negotiate in good faith for months. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that the Ontario economy gets back on track.
Just a clarification. You put the terms and conditions, the Liberal Party put the terms and conditions of the negotiations right in the budget. You said this is the highway, take it or leave it, or we'll legislate it. You did not bargain in good faith, and that case has been made again and again and again. What you can be doing though is you can be supporting a ban on CEO bonuses, the bureaucrats who are receiving bonuses. But neither Mr. Hudak or Mr. McGuinty has agreed to support Andrea Horwath's private member's bill. So if you're really serious about addressing overspending at Queen's Park, let's do something that's manageable right now, right here, and make a commitment to supporting that private member's bill.
Okay, I've got about 30 seconds before news, so I just want to go back to something Stacey said in her opening, and it's part of the Green Party platform. Merging the two school boards. So we have time for yes, no answers, and we'll start with Catherine. Is it a good idea or not?
Our position is why further destabilize public education by breaking all four publicly funded systems down and trying to rebuild on it? The cost savings have not been fully proven.
So that's a no then.
So we are no on that,
okay.
for sure.
Tracy.
Yeah, I think we're committed to the current publicly funded education system. I think this is a broad policy decision, so our answer on that is no.
Eric.
That's not something we're looking at.
Stacey.
I don't believe that it would create destabilization. I think actually what it would do is be able to feed $1.5 billion back into a school system that can stand for some improvement. We're arguing about $500 million over 3 years, and 1.5 is 3 times that amount each and every year. The costs haven't been fully costed out, but we'd like to create a commission to actually look at that.
Oh, no, I got to break for news. I'm right over time. Okay, so we're going to break for news. We'll come back and continue this in just a minute on 570 News.
Lisa's story seems like that of any woman in her 40s.
Back to the Gary Doyle Show on 570 News. News, talk, sports.
It is 9:35. It is back to school day. For some, I just talking to one of the guys in the newsroom whose kids go to a separate school in Guelph, and today's a PD day. I don't know how that happened on day one of school, but I'm loving it. I'm loving a great way to start. Go back for a 3-day work week. So we're going to talk education. We've got 4 candidates here from the KW by-election: Catherine Fife from the NDP, Stacey Dankert from the Green Party, Tracy Weiler from the PCs, and Eric Davis from the Liberals. They're all in studio with us. And trust me, if you're on hold, we appreciate your patience. I've got a lot of people stacked up wanting to get questions in. I've got a lot of email questions. But every time we want to try to get somewhere, we have to, if I'm going to allow point, I also have to allow counterpoint. I feel like that's the only fair way that we can go through this. I know, Tracy, you wanted to talk about CEO bonuses, but Catherine, you wanted to make one more point in reference to...
Just on the one school system that
right.
The Greens have proposed. I mean, certainly there is room for shared resources and finding efficiencies around operational costs. But those can happen without, breaking down all the systems. There's no reason why Catholic and public school students can't be on the same bus. We do have some models across the province that have, a Catholic school and a public school under the same roof. They share the gym and the library and whatnot. So there's room for improvement, and those efficiencies can happen, and they actually are happening. So
okay, now CEO bonuses. I know Tracy, you were trying to get my attention when that one was going on. So we'll just get your position on that now.
Yes, thank you very much. I just wanted to speak to Ms. Fife's position in terms of how we feel in the PC party about CEO bonuses. Ms. Fife alluded to what our position was, so I just want to clarify, in fact, what it is. We do not support the CEO bonuses that were given out this year as the performance basis looked today. Part of the reason for that, with my business experience, when you look at performance bonuses in a pay-for-performance system, you look at 2 things. And the first thing you look at is, can you afford it? And the second thing you look at, has there been exceptional performance? So to address the first issue, or question, if you will, can we afford it? Well, when we're facing a $15 billion deficit, a $35 million bonus, which is approximately what the bonuses would have been, is simply, we're not able to afford it. So that's your first question. The second thing is, has there been exceptional performance? And it's highly statistically likely in any work environment that 98% of any population had exceptional performance. So this has really just become part of base pay, and it's irresponsible in time of this economic risk, our critical place where we are in the economy. This is just simply something that should not be afforded.
Eric.
I just want to quickly address pay for performance. Let's not forget that it was actually the Harris government that actually brought in pay for performance into the public sector. But the Liberal government, since elected in 2003, we've reined it in. There's now one third of the public servants less than it was in 2003 actually receive pay for performance now. Also, we agreed during budget negotiations with the NDP to actually freeze performance pay in the public sector. We've frozen pay for public sector management and cut performance pay by 34%. That saved $16 million over the last 2 years. And we've also asked the Finance Minister, Dwight Duncan, to look into the entire issue of pay for performance to make sure that we carefully analyze it and going forward.
And yet, it's a slap in the face, right? If for people who are losing their jobs, who have had frozen wages, those CEO bonuses are still going out. I mean, the CEO of eHealth, he was supposed to receive an $82,000 bonus this year, if you can believe that. And yet, to his credit, he gave it back. But first of all, it shouldn't have been on the table. So there's a private member's bill right before the legislature. Mr. McGuinty has everybody working to midnight to sort of ram through this legislation. Why not deal with it? Right now, there's a solution on the table. Let's deal with it.
All right, let's go to the phones. Alan, what's your question?
Well, I'd like to just start off by saying I was fairly disappointed with the Liberal candidate's opening statement there. When everybody was talking about what they can do for the community, he went right to bat for the teachers, and chances are none of them are listening because they're in school anyways. But he also uses the term walking away from the negotiating table and balancing the budget. And I'll tell you, there's 60,000 horsemen here in Ontario that are going to lose their jobs and not going to be able to go on anything but welfare because Dwight Duncan and their party is not willing to negotiate and not willing to support their program. I'm a small business owner. I have no vested interest in horse racing, but I'll tell you one thing. When I read the articles in the paper and I see a $350 million investment with a $1.1 billion return, it's a lot better than pulling $300 million power plants out of Mississauga to save 3 seats. So I'd like the Liberal candidate there to explain to me what the rationale is and why they won't sit down with the horse people of Ontario.
All right, Alan, thanks for the question. Eric.
We are actually sitting down with the horse people of Ontario. We've actually started a panel formed of former cabinet ministers, including John Snoblin and John Wilkinson and others, to basically look at the impact on the horse racing industry. We're very much in favor of the horse racing industry. We just want to make sure that it's sustainable. As you may be aware, currently the provincial government supplies over $300 million to the horse racing industry through the Slots at Racetracks program. Right now, we're trying to battle a $15 billion deficit. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at how best can we strike a balance. We need to make sure that we protect the gains we've made in healthcare and education. In healthcare, we need to continue to reduce wait times. In education, we need to continue to make sure the class sizes remain small. So what we're trying to do is strike a balance. So we're working with the horse racing industry right now on how to transition them to a more sustainable model. That's our goal.
And yes.
Okay, let's go to Tracy first.
Yeah, I'm just really amazed how Mr. Davis says that they are in favor of the horse racing industry. Because the horse racing industry have had a lot of opportunity to talk to me and tell them the dire strait that they're in. They have indicated that they will lose up to 60,000 jobs. That's their estimate that will be lost. It's the decimation of an entire industry because of what the government plan is in this area. And I think that when you're going to do that in light of our economic situation where we have 600,000 unemployed, to even think about adding another 10% just off the bat by canceling a program seems irresponsible to me. I had a man come up to me, and I shared this story recently, who was in tears because he said the choice for him was this year, if this program is canceled, he would have to euthanize his animals because otherwise the choice for him was to go bankrupt. And I just think that in light of the current economic situation, whatever the goals of this program is, surely we must be able to find some sort of solution that doesn't go and decimate an entire industry with the stroke of a pen.
All right, Catherine.
And, the math doesn't add up. In these economic times, a $300 million investment to create, jobs and to generate revenue, $1.1 billion. That is, if something is working, you shouldn't interrupt it. And I think, to add insult to injury, this entire fair happened without consultation. Now, what the NDP did during the budget process, and it was a missed opportunity for the PCs because they did not participate, Mr. Hudak walked away, is that we'd negotiated some transition funding at the very least. But, we are still advocating for those conversations to continue. But we were the ones that went to bat for the harness racing industry because, to be fair, jobs are at risk, consultation didn't happen, and the rural folk in this province continue to lose out in the broader equation.
Stacey.
Absolutely. Consultation needs to be one of the primary foci here. We need to make sure that we're talking with the people who actually are going to be most affected by the outcomes. And so forming a panel that doesn't have any of those stakeholders on it isn't necessarily the ideal solution, but talking to these people about how we can perhaps be putting in a little bit less into it and, really making sure that the system is working as efficiently as possible.
Tracy?
I just want to switch the conversation a little bit. Ms. Fife talked about the budget process. And, we actually felt that during the budget process, the PC decision to vote down the budget was the right thing to do. And the reason for that is we actually consulted, and my leader, Tim Hudak, and our finance critic met with Premier McGuinty and Dwight Duncan to talk about what we needed to see in the budget in order to support it. And those things created those suggestions, and they weren't listened to, and they weren't in the budget. And at that time, we were under credit watch by the international credit agencies that share how much of a credit risk you are at. And so we were right to not support the budget because after much consultation, voting it down was the right thing to do because immediately after the budget was passed, our credit rating was downgraded. So we were supported in our decision to vote down the budget, and now we have a lower credit rating, which costs us more to borrow money, which just continues the cycle of increased spending and putting us more and more in debt.
Okay, Eric, you want to get one more point in here?
Yeah, if I can. In relation to the horse racing industry, we've actually allocated $50 million in transition, $50 million in funding to help the horse racing industry transition into a more sustainable model. And the our all-party panel we created actually does and has consulted with stakeholders in the area. Just on the budget process, to quickly address Ms. Weiler's point, let's not forget what happened during the last budget negotiations. Hudak basically came out even before reading the budget and basically said, that's it, we're voting against it, and chose not to participate constructively in the budget process. Andrea Horvath actually chose to sit down and negotiate with the Liberal government, though they ended up backtracking on the deal that they made twice and ended up abstaining from the budget vote. The Liberal Party is a party with a clear plan, a clear focus for Ontario families, and really wants to make sure that we protect key investments that we've made in healthcare and education while making sure that we balance the budget by 2017-2018.
I got one question I want to ask Eric, then we're going to take a quick break. And I don't necessarily feel a need to ask a lot of questions of the candidates. That's why I want to find out what you, the listener, want to know. The MPP for Peterborough, and there was one in the Ottawa area, came out in favor of keeping SARP. Where do you stand on SARP? Should we keep it or should we not?
I'm in favor of what we're doing right now is we're examining the program, but the Liberal government has made it clear that we cannot continue to have over $300 million going towards that program.
So that's no then. You're not in favor of keeping SARP?
No.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. We'll be back in just a minute. This is 570 News.
Call 570-2545 or toll free at 1-800-570-5715. The Gary Doyle Show on 570 News. Doyle Show, 570 News. News, talk, sports.
All right, it is 9:51. Welcome back to the show. Our version of a candidates debate. And I hope we're helping you make up your mind. Because I've said this so many times now, I've never been a decided voter in any election at any level until the last moment. Like, I have my opinions like everybody else, but the last few elections, I've not made up my mind till the ballot has been in my hand. And I think it's important then that we have these types of conversations to help clear up the water, as it were, because the waters get quite muddy during a campaign. Catherine Fife from the NDP, Stacey Deckard from the Green Party, Tracy Weiler from the PCs, and Eric Davis from the Liberals are in studio. Let's take a call. Mike, we appreciate your patience. You're on 570 News.
Hi, how are you? I'm Mike Blocker there. I had a question there. I came down 85 yesterday, and I saw a big purple OPSU bus coming down. Happened to get off in front of me, went down to Weaver to Ms. Fife's office. And I just found that a little bit odd. Like, people are coming in here to our community. And then I hear today, like, every comment you make sides with, the big unions, they don't have enough. Their wages aren't high enough.
Are you talking to one candidate specifically, Mike, or just general terms here?
Yeah, well, I mean, the bus went to Ms. Fife's office. So the wages aren't high enough. They deserve more of our tax dollars. Every answer is spend more money. I mean, so is it you that can't say no to unions, or is it the NDP won't let you?
Well, I think thanks very much for the question. I'd like to address, people coming into the riding. I mean, people are coming into the riding from all the parties. This is an important, and it's a pivotal and could be a historic by-election. So, I mean, all the parties are getting support from outside. But, to your point about OPSU, I mean, they've come in because I think that they are rightly concerned about the direction that the McGuinty and Mr. Hudak now, the direction that they've taken with this legislation. I mean, when you undermine basic collective bargaining rights, of course people are going to fight back. And the Labor Relations Act is very clear. There is a process to be followed. That process has not been followed, and thus is a concern to not just unionized workers, but non-unionized workers. Yesterday I was knocking on doors down in North Kitchener, and a fellow said to me, he goes, if they're attacking people who actually have rights, what about the rest of us? Like, what is going to happen to us now as workers? And this fellow was working 2 part-time jobs. He had had a good job in a union. And, I think that we have to find solutions that work for all Ontarians, to your wage issue and your wage question. But, this fight, if you will, this battle for workers' rights, I mean, certainly the NDP didn't create this. This is a manufactured crisis, specifically about this by-election, and so you shouldn't be surprised that, people from unionized and non-unionized work environments are going to come into this by-election, and they're going to fight for their basic rights. And of course, I mean, that's why this by-election is getting national and even international attention. Because if this battle is lost, you can say goodbye to the middle class in the province of Ontario.
Mr. Davis.
We are working with the collective bargaining process. Let me be clear on that. We've been negotiating with the teachers' union since February. 2 of the teachers' unions walked away in the first day. We respect the collective bargaining process. We're working with all public sector unions to try to make sure that we can reach respective deals. But the fact is that when you're in government, you have to make tough decisions. And one of the decisions that we've had to make is that we cannot afford continual public sector wage increases. We are asking for all public sector workers to take a 2-year wage freeze. We're not cutting their wages. We're just asking for a 2-year freeze because we need to move forward and balance the budget. We need to make sure that we eliminate the $15 billion deficit that we have here in Ontario. It's so important. And what blows me away is that Ms. Fife and the NDP will talk about a collective bargaining, not even respecting the fact that we've been engaging in collective bargaining. But what they'll also say is that they won't actually come out with a position on where they stand on public sector compensation. Throughout this entire election campaign, I have not heard the NDP or Ms. Fife actually come out in a position and say we are either in favor of increasing public sector compensation, or I'm against, or I'm in favor of a public sector compensation wage freeze. And that's not leadership. We need to make sure that we continue to move Ontario forward and balance the budget. And we just need to make sure that we balance the budget here in Ontario because it's so important.
Okay.
You clearly have not been listening. I mean, I know you don't want to hear it, Mr. Davis. I know that the Liberals don't want to hear this. But, the NDP's position has been very clear. We would rather go back to the table, negotiate a settlement versus a legislative response. And when there have been unions, OWECTA put 0 in 0. That is a wage freeze. No wage increase, and 3 unpaid days. and yet you still went to legislation to send them back to work before they even left work. I mean, what we are talking about, even the Canadian Civil Liberties Association has said and ruled that your collective bargaining process that the government has not followed due process, and that you and the Liberals and now Mr. Hudak, by joining the fray, has put the taxpayers of this province at risk to the tune of $780 million. And that's a small C Conservative. So we will lose in court. We will lose in court because you didn't want to do the hard work of going back to the negotiations table and having a conversation with your education partners that you say you respect.
Okay,
well,
Tracy,
I would differ on
Tracy, you got about 30 seconds here.
Yeah, I think we're losing our focus. What I'm hearing at the doors is people are nervous and concerned about the state of our economy. What I hear from Ms. Fife is that the union bosses are supporting the NDP. The NDP is known for more spending, increased taxes. To me, it's just more of the same that we've seen for the past 8 years with the Liberals. And I just think we need to loop back and create a focus on what I'm hearing at the doors, which is a focus on our economy and a focus on creating jobs so the good people of Ontario can get back to work.
All right, that's hour one. We'll be back after the news. This is 570 News.
570 News Community Connection. Friendship, learning, and caring. 3 things that everyone experiences.
All right, it is 10:05. Welcome back. This is hour 2 of the show. Our candidates debate: Catherine Fife from the NDP, Stacey Dankert from the Green Party, Tracy Weiler from the PCs, and Eric Davis from the Liberals are with us in studio. I do appreciate your patience for all of you that have been waiting on hold, and for all the email questions. I've had the same question emailed to me now 3 times by the same person. I will get to those questions. Trust me, I will if time allows. But let's see, who's up here first? Paul, you've been very patient. You're next.
All right, thank you. My question's for Ms. Weiler. Ms. Weiler, your leader, Mr. Hudak, has been calling for reckless cuts to the public service, including teacher layoffs and program reductions. I haven't heard your plan yet in terms of how you plan to grow the economy under such harsh conditions. So I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, when we are looking at growing the economy, thank you very much for your question, because I think growing the economy is one of the key things that I'm hearing at the door. You need to create a friendly business environment. And Business 101 simply tells you that in order to create a friendly business environment, you have to create a competitive environment where you attract investment and you help local businesses, small, medium, large businesses to succeed. So we have a comprehensive job plan that really focuses on supporting job creation and job growth in the province. And that is very much resonating with residents in KW, because we lost 2,800 jobs in the month of June, and that is only scheduled to continue. And that is really simply something that we do not want to see. We want to keep KW prosperous. So our 4-point job plan is simple. We want to create affordable energy. We're hearing from companies and individuals that energy costs have gone through the roof. So we have a plan to do that. The other thing that we want to do is we want to reform the apprenticeship program so we can create 200,000 jobs in the skilled trades where there is demand, and we're hearing that from our local manufacturing companies who want to hire locally. We're also looking at reforming the labor laws from the 1940s, bringing them up to the 21st century. We also want to reduce the red tape. We hear from businesses all the time that the red tape, the legislation, the forms they have to fill out is timely and takes them away from working on their core business strength. And finally, we want to lower business taxes. We live in a global economy. We need to create a competitive environment, be friendly to business, so that we can grow the economy and create jobs.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Catherine?
Thank you. I would like to weigh in, because there was some comments made by Ms. Weiler about the NDP and our spending. And really, my opportunity in this by-election has been able to reintroduce the NDP, a balanced economy, balanced with also strong social policy, because there are costs to social policy, and if Ms. Weiler had come to the poverty reduction debate, she would have learned that there is a direct economic impact for not having policies in place. So you spend a little bit of money now, or you spend a lot of money later. To that point, though, jobs is the number one issue at the door, and our job creator tax credit is resonating very well at the doorstep. Mr. McGuinty has focused on large corporate tax giveaways. Even Mark Carney, the governor for the Bank of Canada, has said that is dead money. So, if you continue to give away our tax dollars and there's no correlation towards job creation, that's plain and simple irresponsible. And yet, the tax credit, a focus on small and medium-sized businesses. 98% of businesses in Ontario have fewer than 100 employees. They create the jobs. Let's reward the job creators. And had Mr. Hudak participated in the budget process, perhaps he could have put forward some of those ideas. Ms. Horvath sat down with Mr. McGuinty. She took out the questions to the public and said, what are the issues that matter to you? We were able to negotiate a 2% increase for those people who make over $500,000. We were able to address some of the deficit that the McGuinty government has built up. And we were able to sort of move the priorities of the people into that budget discussion, Gary.
All right, Eric.
Since 2003, the Ontario's economy has actually created over 500,000 net new jobs in Ontario. Net new jobs. Jobs are incredibly important. That's why we've founded a Jobs and Prosperity Council, which will help the government advise the government on a plan to boost Ontario's productivity. That's going to be important because we have a number of job creation plans out there, but what we're looking to do is to streamline them and make sure that they become more efficient in order to help businesses, especially small businesses, create new jobs. What we've also done is we recently started a Southwest Jobs Fund. It's based after the Eastern Ontario Economic Development Fund, and that recently got passed by the legislature despite the Hudak PCs actually voting against it. We're focused on creating jobs and making sure that Ontario's economy remains strong. We understand that we need to continue to invest in small businesses. One of the opportunities I've had during this election is to visit the Accelerator Center locally, and it is amazing what is going on in the high-tech sector here in Waterloo Region. We are making sure, what I've been told from Communitech and the Accelerator Center is that in Waterloo Region, we have one new tech startup here in Waterloo Region every single day. And that's just amazing. And the Accelerator Center is really focusing on helping create new jobs, especially in the high-tech sector, diversifying the high-tech sector here in Waterloo Region. And that's really important, and the provincial government has made sure to support investments in the Accelerator Center and in job creation, especially in the high-tech sector here in Waterloo Region.
Okay, thank you. Tracy.
Just wanted to thank Ms. Fife for mentioning the poverty debate that I was unable to attend. And the reason for that is because we did have a prior engagement that was scheduled, but I did take the opportunity to meet with the Ontario Poverty Coalition earlier that morning for a 1-hour meeting to chat about the issues that were important for them and what they would like to see from their government. And so that was a really great conversation where I learned much about their challenges and opportunities for enhancing the programs that they'd like to see. I believe that social programs are very important, and we want to be able to invest in them, but we can only invest in them if we create jobs. And just bringing it back to the jobs front, I think that the small and medium businesses in this region would certainly not define the taxes that they pay as corporate big tax giveaways. In fact, they feel that any way that the government can support them in creating a friendly business environment, lowering the cost of doing business to help keep them competitive, is really going to help them in the ability to succeed and hire more employees to work in our province.
All right. Let's get Stacey's been waiting to get in on this too. So Stacey.
I have been. I'd like to also weigh into the discussion about job creation and that sort of idea. I think the Green Party offers great ideas for long-term ideas about how to help build the local economies that we have that really contribute to job creation and the money that we have available for all of the programs that we do need. But I'm going to leave it to the listeners to look to our platform for some of those really great ideas. One of the things that I wanted to touch on, though, was the idea of the affordable energy. And that is that I don't believe that borrowing $1 billion a year to give energy subsidies to people who most often don't actually need that type of subsidy is a wise way to provide affordable energy. What I think is that we should actually be reinstating and expanding on a retrofit program where we actually help to put more value in people's homes by upgrading them. And for half of the cost of nuclear power, which we hear a lot about, we can actually upgrade 1.6 million homes and businesses, save people money, and create 90 times the jobs. And those are local, good jobs that actually are keeping the money within our communities. And I think that spending money on nuclear is a real waste of people's money.
All right, Catherine.
Yeah, just to go back to the small businesses. I mean, I've been very clear. Small businesses are 100 employees and under, and the tax credit that we've offered has been received quite positively. Ms. Weiler talks a little bit about, the increased cost of doing business for small and medium-sized enterprises, and yet Mr. Hudak didn't participate in the budget process, where we were fighting to actually have HST, which is an additional tax for businesses, and it's cost prohibitive, taken off. And so, there are opportunities for minority in a minority setting for everyone to work together, but you actually have to come to the table and do the work. And certainly, Andrea Horvath and the NDP did prove in the last budget session that they were willing and able, and they took it to the people instead of threatening a $350 million general election. We can have these kinds of debates. They are important to the people of the province. But they, what resonates really well at the table, at the doorstep, is people want politicians to work harder. I mean, I'm hearing that, and by working harder, I mean cooperating together to get the economy of this province back on track.
All right, we're going to take a break. If you're on hold, we're going to get back to the calls in just a minute. This is 570 News.
Call 570-2545 or toll free at 1-800-570-5715. The Gary Doyle Show on 570 News. Time to start brewing that coffee just a tad earlier. And Show 570 News.
All right, welcome back. It is 10:19. We're having our version of a candidates debate for the KW by-election, and of course we're streaming live at 570news.com. If you're on hold, I appreciate your patience. We're trying very hard to be fair to the candidates and to try to get a variety of questions on the air. Shannon, you're on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for taking my call. Good morning, Catherine, and all the candidates. I do have a question specifically for Ms. Fife. It's actually a two-part question, if you don't mind answering it. The Liberals have, in my opinion, demonstrated spending well beyond our means as a province, and that's obviously included massive spending for vote buying. We know the situation with the power plants in Orange, and that's been at the expense of taxpayers. So my question for you and for the NDPs, you are also making some big spending commitments, and despite our massive debt, and claiming that this should be at the expense of the wealthy and powerful. So the first part to my question is, I'm wondering if that would also include the very wealthy and powerful union bosses that have rallied behind the NDP. And the second part to my question is, how do you expect to support jobs in the economy when the NDP is supporting unions that are creating massive inefficiencies in our economy, causing job losses and business closures?
All right, thanks, Shannon.
Okay, I guess this question around union bosses. I mean, these are democratically elected organizations, and quite honestly, I mean, they've liaised with all three parties for quite some time of late, mostly the Liberal Party. So I think that when you're having conversations with unions, I mean, our leader Andrea Horvath has been very clear in times of fiscal restraint, everyone has to pay the price, and that means finding solutions that is in the best interest of all Ontarians. And I think that given the fact that though there are wage freezes across the public sector already, I mean, many sectors have been frozen. What hasn't happened, though, just to address your other question, is that we still are seeing CEOs in the public sector receive bonuses. So a pseudo wage freeze on their core salary, and yet bonuses. And so we're trying to address that for sure. they're currently, obviously with a $15 billion deficit, you've got to work pretty hard to get into that kind of hole. We've made a strong case for providing the checks and balances at Queen's Park. In a minority setting, actually, the NDP can play a pivotal part in ensuring that expenditures are streamlined and that we find efficiencies. You only have to look at the healthcare sector to look at some extreme waste. We are not investing earlier in preventative and early intervention health options. We are not making the best use of nurse practitioners or midwives. We're not focusing on home care for seniors. Seniors want to stay in their home. It's a better option than a long-term care facility or a hospital bed. And so there are many areas actually to find efficiencies. The job creation piece that we've tried to get the Liberals to listen to around a job creator tax credit, which has proven effective elsewhere, could be a possibility if in this next budget session, that Mr. Hudak stays at the table and agrees to go to work for the people of this province. So there are many options, and we're working with all parties to make it happen.
All right, Eric.
I just want to address the part of the question that dealt with the Liberal economic record. Let's not forget that in 2003, the Liberal government was saddled with a $5.6 billion deficit. We tackled that deficit, and we balanced the budget for 3 consecutive years. Then we were faced with a significant economic downturn in 2008. In fact, probably the most serious economic downturn since the Great Depression. And then what did we do? We did exactly what other governments around the world did and what the federal government did as well. We invested in people. We made sure to create jobs by investing in infrastructure and jobs to make sure that the Ontario economy can turn the corner. And now what we're doing is we're going to bring the budget back to balance again. We're focused and we have a plan to do that by 2017-2018. But let's remember the opposition record. Earlier on this year, we introduced a budget and our plan was clear, to balance the budget. The Hudak PCs basically decided to vote against it even before reading it. And the NDP went back on their budget deal twice and then ultimately decided to abstain. We're offering Ontarians a responsible, middle-of-the-road approach to making sure that we bring Ontario's budget back to balance. We're not suggesting across-the-board cuts. We're not suggesting, basically firing tens of thousands of public sector workers. What we're asking for, one of the key things that we're asking for, is a 2-year wage freeze. That's a responsible, middle-of-the-road approach that will help eliminate Ontario's deficit by 2017-2018.
All right, Tracy.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're back in talking about the budget because it is something that is a pretty serious concern here in Ontario. In clarifying the record, I think Mr. Davis and Ms. Fife don't want to listen to the serious predicament that we are in the province of Ontario, because we did have conversations with McGuinty, our premier, and Dwight Duncan prior to the budget conversations, prior to the budget being presented, to explain what we needed to see in the budget in order to support it. We take our fiscal situation very seriously, and the budget increased spending in a time when we are approaching a $15 million deficit by $1.8 billion over last year. You don't have to have a good background in math to know that when you're in times of fiscal restraint, increasing the budget by $1.8 billion is kind of going in the wrong direction. And just to add, we talked about the horse racing industry, and Ms. Fife's NDP party's support of the budget actually was supporting the Liberal plan to change the slots at the racetracks, because that was in the budget.
I'm going to weigh in on that.
No.
Because that's because that's completely untrue. The NDP was you wouldn't know, your party wouldn't know, because they weren't there. They didn't show up to work. And what a missed opportunity for the people of this province. And that really isn't true leadership. True leadership shows up, as Andrea Horvath did in the NDP. She took it to the people of the province. She said, what are your priorities? They said, childcare. We needed to pull in some additional revenue, which we proposed, 2% increase for those people who make over $500,000. We had a renewed focus strategically in healthcare, which actually saves money down the line. And on the harness racing, I need to be very clear on this. We fought for transition funding for the harness racing because we thought that what they had experienced at the hands of the Liberals was completely unfair. no consultation, a reduction in an investment in an idea and in a business that actually was proving to pull in revenue for the province. So let's not revise the past too quickly here.
Stacey, you're next.
So I think that I continue to hear some short-sighted solutions to long-term problems, and I'd really like to see us focus more heavily on those long-term solutions. We do have a huge deficit that we have to deal with, because I don't want the third highest payment that I make every month to be in interest payments. And I'm sure that that's true for everybody else as well. And so we do need to value people who have jobs and treat them with respect and cooperation and consultation when we're dealing with negotiations. But we also do need to all work together to try to limit this deficit and start talking about more creative solutions, like saving $1.5 billion on merging the school boards and other solutions that we've come forward with that nobody else wants to talk about.
All right, if you're on hold, don't go away. We got a break for news, and we'll be back with the last half hour of our candidates debate here on 570 News and streaming live at 570news.com.
I'm here with Ami from Joseph & Company. So what exactly do you do with the scrap metal you collect?
Turn to the Gary Doyle Show on 570 News. News, talk, sports.
It is 10:35. Welcome back to the show. It has been a fun-filled 90 minutes so far, and we have four of the candidates in the Canterbury by-election in studio with us, taking your questions and comments. Catherine Fife from the NDP, Stacey Dankert from the Green Party, Tracy Weiler from the PCs, and Eric Davis from the Liberal Party, all with us in studio. And we've got a lot of people on hold. Listen, I really appreciate your patience. We're going to get to as many as we can, and let's start this conversation with Mitch. Mitch, you're on the air.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
I'm well.
Hey, so I'm one of those local weirdos who sort of pays attention to politics all the time. And it's a pretty well-known fact now that Catherine Fife approached the Liberals to run as the candidate in Kitchener-Waterloo. And so I'm just wondering if she can confirm or deny that. And should she win, will she resign her seat if information comes to light that she did, in fact, approach the Liberals to run as their candidate in this by-election?
Well, you called that a well-known rumor?
Yeah.
I thought I was a political junkie.
Have you heard that one?
No,
Gary?
this is the first for me. So.
It's going around, Gary.
Okay, all right. I'm not discounting it, Mitch. I'm just saying I didn't hear it. Go ahead, Catherine.
Well, there obviously are lots of rumors. I mean, this is a high-stakes by-election, and but to be clear, I mean, I have had conversations with actually all the parties about the by-election, about what would be the issues. And certainly for me, the NDP was the number one. Was the number one choice. I ran in 2007 as a candidate and served on the New Democrat provincial executive. So it would be really hard to run as a Liberal when you're not a Liberal. So that's my answer for you.
All right, let's keep on rolling. Who's next here? Linda, you're on. Hello, Linda.
Hello.
You're on.
Yes, thank you. Good morning to all the representatives. But my question or comment is geared towards the Liberal representative. I work for the health system, and I work for Hamilton Health Sciences. And we have been without a contract for over 4 years. And we had a verbal agreement with our organization, and they were stalling. We recently got a memo from them showing from the Ministry of Finance for them to stall and not to settle. And I find that's not negotiating in fairness with the unions nor with the hospital, putting them in a difficult position. So if I was in favor of the Liberal government, I certainly don't like their backdoor politics. That's my comment.
All right, more of a comment than a question, so we'll just leave it sitting there. Peter, you're next. You're on with the candidates.
Hi, Gary. I happened to get that Liberal ad in the mail that talked about the NDP being in the pocket of unions, and I wanted to dig into it a little further. So I actually looked up the NDP constitution, and when I was reading it, it seemed to me that they actually allocate a specific amount of votes in their party to union bosses and union members. So my question for Ms. Fife is, how will you stand up to unions if unions have, a certain share, I think it's up to a third of the vote within your party.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, unlike, I guess, some of the other parties, our Constitution is public, and those relationships are long-standing. And, at the end of the day, every party runs as a democratic organization, and so voices are respected, but it is, and the votes are public. And, for me, if I'm elected on September 6th, I mean, my priority is the people of this riding, and I've been very clear about that. In fact, I've served the people of this riding for 9 years as a trustee and as chair of the school board, and I bring to the discussion also provincial and national experience. And, as I've already said, I mean, the unions have relationships with all of the parties, not so much the PCs. There's a lot of conflict there because they want to cut, and you can't cut your way to prosperity. But clearly the unions have been very supportive of the Liberals in the past. And those are relationships that ebb and flow as the issues emerge. And certainly every party, and I'm very proud to be a member of the New Democrat Party, because we are certainly on the rise, and we've developed a new approach to balancing economic priorities and social policies, and that is resonating very well at the doorstep. So I thank you very much for your question, though.
All right, Justin, you're next.
Hi, my question is for Tracy Wheeler. My question is, if you lose the by-election, will your leader resign? Tim Hudak.
Absolutely not. Tim Hudak is a great visionary leader, and one of the reasons why I decided to run in this by-election is because the PC party is the only party that has a strong economic plan that balances creating jobs with reducing the cost and size of government. So when we look at an economic plan, you have to look at creating investment in business. You have to look at supporting and creating a friendly business environment. And the PC party is the only party that has a plan to do that.
All right, Eric.
No, they're not. I just want to be clear on that point. The Liberal Party has invested millions and millions of dollars in job creation programs. We have a Jobs and Prosperity Council. We've created a new Southwest Jobs Fund, even though the Hudak PCs voted against the Southwest Jobs Fund. We are focused on ensuring that small, medium, and large businesses right across the Southwest and right across the entire province continue to grow and prosper. Jobs are important. The Ontario economy has created over 500,000 net new jobs since 2003. We've made sure during the economic downturn to invest in people, to invest in infrastructure, to create jobs, to make sure that people had jobs at a time when they needed it the most. We care deeply about making sure that people have sustainable, gainful employment here in Ontario, and we have a plethora of programs to ensure that those gains continue.
Tracy.
Yeah, I think that we've seen the result of the Liberal plan over the last 9 years, and I think the residents of Kitchener-Waterloo, when I'm speaking to them at the door, have quite clearly indicated the need for change. The overspending and the waste that has just taken us more and more in debt is something that we cannot continue. I mean, we've got tons of examples of overspending and waste. $190 million on a power plant that was canceled. I mean, that could have afforded, I think it was something like 25,000 MRIs. I mean, in times when we need investment in critical services, healthcare and education, it's absolutely irresponsible to have this overspending and waste.
All right, Stacey, you wanted in on this?
Yes, so I would also tend to disagree. The Green Party has fiscal responsibility that flows along all of the lines of all of our policies. We believe first and foremost in always having balanced budgets, and also at the same time finding creative ways that are long-term solutions to helping the people in your communities that need that help.
And finally, I'd like to weigh in, because, I mean, for any party to say that they're the only party is just a misnomer. I mean, especially in a minority setting when the onus and the responsibility is for all the parties to work together. And that's what we tried to do in this last minority budget session, is that, we sat down with the Liberals and we recognized that we needed to bring in some revenue. And so a 2% increase on those who make out $500,000, That went to deficit reduction. That went to an investment in childcare. People need childcare so that they can work and go to school. And then we were able to strategically invest in some healthcare options as well. And so, at the end of the day, we have to have a broader conversation about taxation. We continue to give these large corporations, not the small and medium-sized ones, but these large corporations, tax giveaways that there's no accountability on those dollars, Gary. And Mark Carney and even Jim Flaherty has said those dollars are sitting in the profit margins of banks and corporations. There's no correlation to job creation. So we need to pause. We need to reevaluate, and we need to embrace all the parties. And that's what I would do if I'm elected on September 6th. I would sit down. I would work with all the parties to get the economy back on track.
All right, we're going to take our final commercial break in the debate and be back. If you're on hold, stick around. We're getting to as many as we can. This is 570 News.
Call 570-2545 or toll free at 1-800-570-5715. The Gary Doyle Show on 570 News.
Being a 5...
Gary Doyle Show, 570 News.
It is 10:47. Welcome back to the show. We are rapidly running out of time here. So let's see if we can get some more callers on the air with some questions. Dan, we appreciate your patience. You're next.
Thanks, Gary. I just have one really quick question for all candidates. I've told Jeff Allen so many times on his Hour of Rage that I'm just fed up with the fat cat union bosses absolutely running political parties like puppets. And I just want one question, and it's yes or no. I just want to know which candidate will freeze all public sector wages, not just the teachers, but all public sector wages. Yes or no to all the union bosses?
All right, I'll start from my left to my right then to make it easy for me to remember who's addressed it. Catherine?
No.
Okay, so it's a yes, no. It's pretty simple that way. Stacy?
No.
Tracy?
We do support public sector.
No. Hey. Yes, no. That's all I want is yes, no. Yes, okay.
Yes, for Ontario public sector workers.
All right, there you go. That's all I wanted was yes, no. Rick, you're next. Hello, Rick.
Oh, hi there, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
No worries.
I've got a two-part question for you, if I may. I think it's important to get the candidate's opinion, both policy and from just to get to know the candidate perspective. So my question is both to Eric and Catherine. First of all, you're both on record for supporting, your party supporting a job-killing carbon tax. And at the height of the recession, Eric, you were calling for a carbon tax that would certainly increase taxes in the province and certainly curb job creation, as well as one of the Liberal members from the Ottawa area who made those statements public over the last couple of weeks. So if you could both give me your position on a carbon tax. And second, Eric, I've heard around town that it is can you confirm or deny that you actually do not live in the riding of Kitchener-Waterloo, that you actually live in Kitchener-Conestoga?
Eric?
On the carbon tax, I do not support a carbon tax, and the McGuinty Liberal government will not introduce a carbon tax. As for the riding question, I currently live in Kitchener, outside the riding of Kitchener-Waterloo. But let me tell you about my history in Kitchener-Waterloo. I've grown up in Kitchener-Waterloo. I went to Keatsway Public School, Centennial Public School, KCI, and Wilfrid Laurier University, all within the city of Waterloo. I went away to law school, and then I came back to the riding of Kitchener-Waterloo. I love this community. I work in the city of Waterloo every single day, as does my wife. I actually used to be and all of my community involvement in the city of Waterloo through the United Way, through the Chamber of Commerce, through the Canadian Mental Health Association. I'm committed to Kitchener-Waterloo. I love that community, and I've spent the vast majority of my life there.
All right, Blake, you're up.
Hi. I've been hearing the candidates talk about jobs, and before I ask my question, I just want to say the fact that Eric Davis thinks that the solution to our jobs crisis now is to make a committee, that's a bad joke. Even though that's pretty pathetic. My question, though, is, how can we trust these guys to create jobs when this Matza guy who runs Orange is walking away with millions of dollars? He basically used it as his personal piggy bank. And Deb Matthews was sitting in the wings and didn't do anything. So I just want to know, why does Deb Matthews still have her job as health minister?
All right. Who wants to tackle that one first? Eric?
Sure. Well, just in relation to the orange issue, we readily acknowledge that the proper controls were not in place at Orange. But we've saw that issue and we've addressed it. We've brought in legislation to make sure that those similar issues don't ever happen again. I don't think anyone expects their government to be perfect, but what people do expect are for their government to actually see problems and address them. So we've seen the problem at Orange, and we're addressing it. We're making sure that people's tax dollars are spent wisely. In relation to job creation, the Jobs and Prosperity Council will basically focus on our plan to boost Ontario's productivity. So we have a number of job creation programs in Ontario, and what we want to do is we want to make those easier to access and make sure that people can actually use them and have a sort of one-stop shop for these sorts of programs, because we understand how important it is for us to create jobs, both small, medium, and long-term, both jobs for all kinds of industries right here in Ontario.
All right, Catherine.
Well, just on the just specifically to this question, I mean, on Orange, I mean, it isn't just about Orange. It's also about e-health, and it's about the Mississauga gas plant, and potentially about the Oakville gas plant, and I think it comes down to oversight. And in a minority setting, you have other parties who are sitting in committee sessions and participating in that process around ensuring that tax dollars actually are spent appropriately. And it's true, like on Orange. At the end of this inquiry, we actually have more questions than answers. 60 people were interviewed, with the exception of the Premier. And at the end of the day, so nobody took responsibility for it. So how can we have this financial debacle? I mean, people's lives were obviously indirectly affected. And how can we not know what went wrong so that we can actually improve the entire process?
Stacey.
Yes, so I think that there's a clear need here for more accountability and more transparency in what's going on in government. And I think that this is a great opportunity here in this by-election for people to push for that. A swing vote in Parliament or in Queen's Park for me would be giving me a strong voice to push to make sure that the government is held accountable and make sure that they're always transparent in their actions.
Yeah, I think residents of Kitchener-Waterloo need a strong voice in the legislature. And I think, when I'm hearing that voice at the doors of the residents and how they want to be represented, examples like Orange and e-health and the Mississauga and Oakville power plants makes people angry. I mean, they see it as gross incompetence, not slightly less than perfect, as Mr. Davis would have us believe. I mean, they understand that this is their precious tax dollars that should be invested in critical health services, critical education services. And so we need to make sure that we build more accountability into the system so this doesn't happen again.
All right, the rebuttal phase, we're going to have to stop there because we've got just enough time left now for closing comments. So we're going to do that in reverse order of opening comments. You each get 60 seconds. Mr. Davis.
Thanks, Gary. This election is all about values. And I think all of your listeners have to ask themselves, what do they value? I can tell you that I'm proud to be a member of the Liberal Party because the Liberals offer a balanced approach. We want to protect the gains we've made in healthcare and education while making sure that we balance the budget. We want to protect lower class sizes, increased graduation rates, early learning through full-day kindergarten. We also want to protect shorter surgical wait times. We want to protect investing in home care. These are all of the things that the Liberal government has stood for and all of the critical investments that the Liberal government has made since 2003. We need to make sure that Ontario continues to move forward and does so in a balanced approach. That's why we're asking for a public sector wage freeze to make sure that we can balance the budget by 2017-2018 while not sacrificing the public services that all Ontarians hold dear. So on September the 6th, I would encourage everyone to vote Liberal, vote Eric Davis.
All right, Tracy Weiler.
Thank you. Well, very much it's an honor for me to be the PC candidate in this by-election. It is a critical by-election for the residents of Kitchener-Waterloo and for the province of Ontario, which puts us in a bit of unique perspective. And as I'm going around the doors, residents are concerned about the economy and jobs. And with my business background and experience in the business sector, I understand that the PC Party has a strong plan to address our economic and fiscal situation in a way that will create prosperity in Ontario. As I mentioned previously, I'm a mom with 2 young children. Ontario is not the Ontario that I knew when I was growing up. And I wanted to be part of this process, create change, be part of the environment that will look at turning Ontario's economy around, creating prosperity. And so I think that, I respectfully have put forward our plan and would respectfully ask for your vote for Tracy Weiler, the PC candidate for MPP, on September the 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey Deckard.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's been a pleasure. I hope that people listening will consider this great opportunity for a real alternative to the status quo. Let's hold the Liberals accountable with a vote for a strong voice for Kitchener-Waterloo. Don't simply elect another backbencher. I love this community, and I want to be a strong voice for the needs of this community so we can continue to thrive and grow. I hope that you will consider a vote for me on Thursday.
All right, Stacey Deckard, and now Catherine Fife.
Thank you very much, Gary. This is a historic election, and people do want something to vote for, not to vote against. And I think that what I'm hearing at the doorstep is that there are some trust issues, and people want this minority government to work. With that said, as far as the candidates go, I've been educated by this riding. I've served the community for 9 years as a trustee and chair. I've learned a lot along the way, and I'd like to put that knowledge and that experience to work for the people of this riding. And so I respectfully ask that on September 6th, please vote Catherine Fife, NDP, and be part of history.
All right. Now, I want to thank the 4 of you for taking 2 hours out of what is the stretch run of a campaign to spend with us today and take questions from listeners, from emailers. We appreciate that. I've said this many times on the show. I have a lot of time. I've got a lot of respect for people that let their name stand for public office because it's such a necessary part of our society that I don't personally want to be involved in. So I admire politicians. I admire firefighters, police, anyone that does the public service stuff that is absolutely necessary to make us continue to be a terrific place to live, that I've got no interest in doing. So I respect all of you for letting your names stand. Thursday night, we will be simulcasting live with Rogers TV for the election coverage. Michelle will be on after that. So Thursday's your chance to vote. If you haven't made up your mind yet, hopefully what you've learned in the last 2 hours has helped you narrow your list. Thank you all for coming in. This is 570 News.
570 News Community Connection.
Have you seen every